You know what, Jamie? Let's pop off right now. We got to get started.
We gotta go.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's get the people in the chat. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrisSportsDaily.com. I am your host, Greg Flamong, and with me, as always, is Jamie Ueyama, Jamie University. It is Tuesday, August 15th, and we are here. We're going to be talking about fall camp, the wrap-up of fall camp. That has ended. It ended with a big scrimmage over the weekend, 100-play scrimmage. We heard from Marcus Freeman afterwards, and he talked about that. So the team has broken camp. It seems as though they got out of camp relatively unscathed. They did have a couple of unfortunate injuries to Aiden Gobira and Kevin Bauman again. Man, what a bummer for him. It's you hate to see it, man. Like you really do. It's
horrible.
You don't want anyone to get hurt, but especially him. He's been through a lot. So they got through that, and that's going to be unfortunate for them and Aiden Gobira as well. He just come off 2 sacks and he gets hurt. So that's unfortunate. He's going to have to rehab, and hopefully he hits the ground running on that. But we're going to talk about the team, and we're going to talk about how we feel about the offense and the defense. Where things stand, where we thought they would stand coming out of it. If we're we feel better about things, we feel worse about things. We're going to go through everything. If you have questions, please send them along. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. If this is your first time, please hit the like, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know we're going live. Links to our podcast are in the description below. And before we get ready, Jamie, you know what we got to do? We got to talk about Ga Wang and his ESQ clothing company.com, esqclothing.com, and his bamboo dress shirt, crafted from high quality bamboo fabric, the softest and most comfortable shirt you'll ever put on. It's not only more sustainable than cotton, feels cooler, has stretch, odor, and wrinkle resistant. It's even machine washable, Jamie. I think that the fact that you don't have to spend money on dry cleaning for these shirts is an underrated aspect. People talk about the price. It pays for itself in dry cleaning, Jamie. You don't have to go to
ultimate work shirt.
It's ultimate. So it's a performance dress shirt. You're going to want to get it. You've seen it on Marcus Freeman out on recruiting visits. Perfect shirt for today's business meeting or heading for a night out. So hit up esqclothing.com. Upgrade your shirt game, Jamie. All right. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Corey Flynn says, the Flame and the Yama, bring it, boys. I like it. Call Me Ty says he made it to a live show. Happy to have you. Happy to have you here. It sounds like you don't normally catch us live, so thank you for joining this one. Brendan says, how excited were you guys to see Bruce Feldman's Freaks List? Surely this annual list of totally legitimate measurables and workout statistics rev your engines.
I think whatever. That's a little bit harsh on. I think people can be critical of some of the stuff with Bruce, some of his stories and how he obviously, veers towards certain guys that he's friendly with. That's fine, whatever. I'm fine with that criticism, but the Freaks List is a pretty cool thing. Like I think overall, like they get nothing from exaggerating those things because the scouts look into it and figure it out. And also too, you got to be able to play, right? So, there's some guys on the list that can't really ball, you know what I mean? But they are freaks, right? So, I don't know. I always think I look forward to it every year. I think it's fun.
I think because I went back and checked last year's versus like combine results and pro day results. I think the numbers are a little inflated. I do think though, like, it is correlated with who, like they do well at the combine. They just don't do as well as the numbers provide, which is probably.
Rarely does anyone do as well as they test when they're
for sure. Look, someone did something once. Maybe I have a big problem with like the GPS stuff. I don't like this guy ran 23 miles an hour. Like, okay, that's faster than anyone in the NFL ran at any point like ever last year. So I don't think these guys run 23 miles an hour. I don't like the GPS.
Oh, they pick it out just from like one instance in practice or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
I don't.
Like it's like there was remember that Braden Lindsay, I can't remember which game it was. Might have been
no.
USC.
It was Avery Davis. It was Avery Davis.
No. It was Braden Lindsay where he had one but it was Brock Wright who was blocking for him, and Brock Wright ran 21 miles per hour.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, like, yeah, I'm sure he ran in that moment. He ran faster than whatever, but it's like no one is confusing Brock Wright as like this blazing vertical threat or whatever, you know.
Well, just lighten it up for the Lions. So maybe there's.
I mean, he's in the league, but definitely not for running 21 miles per hour.
Yeah. All right. Before we get started, David Solomon, how do you feel about Drew Pine and Tyler Buckner at this point? Drew Pine was named the starter at OSU, then injured his hamstring, and is going to miss the start of the season.
I don't think he was named. He wasn't named the starter.
I don't think he was named the starter either.
I think he was like number 2.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. I think he was going to be the backup to whoever. It seemed like that
at this point.
Yeah. That was going to be the case. I mean, it's injuring your hamstring. It's no good, especially coming out of camp, because that means you're not getting any reps for anything, and that's really bad. Tyler Buckner, the reviews have been, I don't even know if you could say mixed. I mean, he
didn't do good in the late scrimmage.
He didn't do it good in late scrimmage. I think he threw a few interceptions there. He's never going to be good in a scrimmage type situation, like in camp, because he needs to be running.
Yeah.
He needs to be running, and you're not going to run these guys in camp. So if it's only passing, it's kind of similar to Phil Dracovic, really. Just like he's got to be physical. But yeah, it's I don't know. I mean, look, we went over it when he was when he went to Bama, when it was announced. We were surprised, right? Like it just didn't seem like a good fit. It didn't seem like the kind of place that he should go. And that's kind of bearing fruit. I mean, look, good luck. I mean, I wish him the best, you know. I don't have any ill will toward him. You know, it's understandable why he left Notre Dame. I mean, do you have anything to comment on there as far as Buckner or Pine? I mean, they both seem.
I mean, both those guys, they bet on themselves. Like, I don't hate. I'm not ever going to hate on anyone for betting on themselves. You know, go for it. Like, you know, because a lot of people said, why didn't they go to like a better situation? I mean, with Buckner, obviously, it's like if it works out, it's like, yeah, it's everything that he ever dreamed of, right? Is there. So, and then he's got the advantage of it's Tommy Rees, so he doesn't have to come in and, you know, really like. Oh no, actually, I heard they're not really running a lot of Tommy's offense. So
Tommy said it.
Yeah.
So he said, I was like, what? He had to learn the Bama offense.
I don't think it's his call. You know, I think that's one of the things. It's like, also too, why are you hiring this guy? If this is whatever, why didn't you just promote from within if this is what you were going to do? But whatever. I think, you know, so it wasn't as ideal. And I don't think Buckner probably thought about that part of it. Either way, he was going to go to some place where, you know, he had to learn stuff and he was behind. I mean, Pine was there, you know, early, so that it's different. I don't know. Like it's tough. Like I certainly wasn't rooting against those guys.
No.
But I just think it also shows that, like, you know, Notre Dame's quarterback situation last year, I mean, it wasn't the greatest. They would be if they're not starting at the whatever and at where they're at. Because I don't certainly, like, even though you could say, oh yeah, it's going to be tough for Buckner at Bama. I mean, it's not like the other guys are lighting it up, you know, like he would have had a shot. Like, that's why it kind of did make sense from that perspective. Right. So I don't know. It's tough, but you know, the thing is that both guys have a lot of eligibility left still after this year. So it doesn't work out. they can graduate and go somewhere else, right?
Last year didn't count for Buckner. I was stunned when I heard Reese say that he had to learn Bama's offense and that they had to like run things the way Bama did. He had to adjust the calls. Have you ever heard of that?
I mean,
A
I
new
have
OC
heard,
going somewhere.
I have heard of it. Yeah, I have heard of it. Like it's something that like um, I remember with Oklahoma State, that was something that they had done because they had a ton of success.
Yeah.
I mean, the name of the OC escapes me right now, but it was remember when Brandon Whedon was there, right? Brandon Whedon was there, and it was like, well, they had it rolling with Brandon Whedon, and they had numerous good receivers during that time period, and they didn't want to change it, so the new guy came in, and it was like, okay, we're not changing for you. So, I mean, I can't remember how. I think it turned out okay because Brandon Whedon, even though it didn't work out from the NFL, he became a first round pick. So
for sure. Look, Oklahoma State's been known for offense. I mean, that's
yeah. So I mean, that's one instance where I can recall, but outside of that, I don't really remember any other time.
Yeah, Matthew Patterson says, isn't that what Marcus Freeman said would happen without Golden running the D, or did I misunderstand? No, that is true. I think the difference to me is Nick Saban's not an offensive coach. Marcus Freeman's a defensive coordinator. So like it makes sense then. So it's like, yeah, like if you're going to keep things and you have to learn the terminology for Marcus Freeman's defense, well, that makes sense. But Nick Saban doesn't have an offense. He's not an offensive coordinator. That's why I was very surprised. I did not think that would be the case.
I think Golden came in and the terminology might have been the same, but the defense wasn't the same. They didn't run the same defense. They added a lot. And they talked about kind of like stuff that they took out from last year or whatever, because that Golden had added last year. Right. So, it's different. It's a different situation.
Yeah. All right. So look, good luck to Buckner. Good luck to Drew Pine. Hopefully, Whittingham said it was a minor hamstring tear. Usually those things aren't considered minor if you're talking about a tear in the hamstring, but whatever. Maybe the way he was describing it, maybe just used the wrong words or something, but good luck to those guys. All right, moving on to the Notre Dame football team. Jamie, camp is broken. You were there for a week. And before we get into it, good job by you, man. You guys, you did a great job with coverage. I thought Matt and Drew did a great job. Mike, when he was there, like I'm very impressed as an unbiased observer, or a biased observer for sure. But good job by ISD on the coverage this year. I thought you guys did a great job. I thought you write some really good reports. You had some really good insights. Matt had some really good insights that you put on the board. Go to irisportsdaily.com. I guess this is a shameless plug for our site, but good job by you, Jamie. I enjoyed all your coverage for the last week. Really good stuff.
Well, thanks. I thought we did a good job too. So
yeah, welcome.
Check it out, everybody.
You're welcome. It was time well spent in South Bend. So let's talk about what you saw there. And let's start with the offense, and let's kind of take a broad view of it. What are you more encouraged by after seeing them and being around the team for a week? And well, let's start there. What are you more encouraged by, just given what you've seen?
I think just the defense in general.
No, offense. Let's do offense first.
Oh, let's do offense first. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. To be honest, I don't know if I'd say like I'm more encouraged by anything. I kind of feel the same way that I did for the most part. Not like I don't feel like if I was gonna say like stock up, stock down, I'd say hold. Right? Because it's not like we didn't go there. And to be fair, we saw one full practice, right? We saw one full practice, several other days where it was 5-period days and stuff too. And in that practice too, like when we had a lot of scrimmage time, which was great, but you didn't see a ton of the number one offense. And you also didn't see a ton of, you didn't see any Audric Estime during that time. Right.
Yeah.
So because of that, and then also to Jerron Payne was hurt that day, so that's probably like, you know, your 1-2 in the backfield that are down, and it was just one of those days where it's tough to get a full grasp of exactly what you're going to see there. I guess the things that I was encouraged by was, you know, I thought the same kind of like thing that we saw from Sam Hartman, I think in the spring game, where people were, you know, feeling very positive about it. I think I saw a lot of that in terms of him just like, you know, managing things. You know, certainly they didn't connect on the deep ball that well that day, but we know he's capable of that. We know that he's obviously a guy who can be very accurate in terms of some of the back shoulder stuff, but just handling the blitz, checking down to kind of move the chains, just stuff that you expect from a veteran quarterback, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that I think is always good, because I think that's something that probably goes underrated, because everybody just thinks about like, man, if only like Notre Dame was like more explosive and doing this and that. It's like a lot of the times, like it's about just keeping the drive alive and keeping moving the chains. And like when this play, it's instead of it being you know, 3rd and long, you get it to 3rd and short, right? Because you make the right play and you hit the right check down, right? So I I don't know if I guess you were criticizing me privately, but whatever. Thanks, C-Mac.
He likes his
Whatever.
stuff. He like it. Like,
I
we're
guess,
taking a
but
compliment.
I know, but I guess you were ripping on me to your friends privately about my writing. But I okay, whatever. But thanks. So, what a weird comment. But I mean, thanks. But yeah, yeah. Thought you sucked before, but okay. Anyways, I think really the main thing too is that the receivers, the fact that they have Greathouse and Flores are for real, right? Those guys are for real. Those are guys who are going to play this year. They are going to help this year. They can probably contribute more than you'd see from most freshman wide receivers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think you know, that is something that I think absolutely needed to happen, right? It needed to happen. And you saw that in the spring. So it's not like a big shock, but both those guys took a jump from the spring to now. Holden stays, right? Is something that you've been talking about a lot, Greg, too. I mean, he is definitely someone that took a big jump from the spring to now.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to be a weapon. I think, too, you know, if you just went into the season and you said, because Eli Raridon, he's not fully healthy yet, he's not fully cleared. I think when he does get cleared, I think if he can stay healthy, man, the sky's the limit for what that guy can do. But until then, you didn't want to just be in a situation where you only felt good about Mitchell Evans. And even then, Mitchell Evans, I think, can be a piece in the passing game, but not really. He's not going to be Michael Mayer in the passing game, right?
Yeah.
So, and his strength is probably more as an inline blocker, right? So, I think I would say that stays his presence in the passing game, I think, is going to make a big difference for Notre Dame, especially early on before you know, Raridon is there, because I mean, you mentioned Bauman, right? That's the thing with like, man, Bauman, I just, you know, not to just dwell on it too much, but just, it's just what a shame. Just what a shame. This guy, 3 years in a row. Obviously, you know, the thing is that Notre Dame, they aren't on campus anymore, but Notre Dame has had guys who've gone through this and ended up having, like, you know, contributed, right? Like Sean Crawford, Drew Tranquil had the, you know, back-to-back years of blowing out his knee. So there are examples that at least the training staff can point to. Maybe they can put him in touch with a guy like Sean Crawford. Might not be a bad idea. But if you said, so 2021 in camp, he had a really great camp. And there were days where you're like, oh man, this guy's going to be the number 2 to Michael Mayer. And if Michael Mayer wasn't on the team, you would have said, oh, I'm feeling really good about where Bauman can be in his potential. So I think from that perspective, and you look at kind of what has happened since then, it's just, man, you just feel for someone like that.
Yeah.
And then really kind of where they're at right now, I think they needed Stays to kind of step up, and he really, really has. So those are, big developments for Notre Dame.
Yeah. All right. So a couple things. First, the freshman. You mentioned we saw it from Flores and in Great House in the spring. There is a difference between showed ability in the spring and showed it in the fall, because a lot of veterans, like, the intensity level is different in the spring than it is in the fall. I mean, they're like fighting all the time in practice. Like Matt wrote about this, like, you have guys who have been in the program, and they're like the intensity is turned up. Like, if you can then make plays in that environment, then that's a little bit different, to your point, about, like, you see it in the spring, that's one thing. You see it in the fall, it's like that's prepping for, like, the season, and these veterans, like, they know what that takes. They know what they're ramping up towards. So if they're able to match that shows a lot for them. And the other part too is, we talk about, like you said, Hartman, and you're talking about the deep ball wasn't there. And I think we're all thinking about how the fact that he'll take shots down the field, and that's going to, change the offense in such a big way. They're going to take a big jump. I think the thing that people don't, factor in as much is last year, and we pointed it out a ton, is there were so many opportunities for easy yards that they just didn't take advantage of because of the limitation at quarterback, and it's not a limitation in terms of arm strength. Like, that is the difference between being like a good college quarterback and being a quarterback who can, quote unquote, run the offense and make plays and do that sort of thing. Like, if you go back to, like, the 2005 year, we go back to that a lot. But a huge difference between 04 and 05 was Charlie Weiss introduced the look throw, where it was just like stand up and throw. If they're going to be off, then stand up and throw. They got so many easy yards and easy first downs off of, like, these aren't play calls. These aren't schemes, this isn't X's and O's. It's just, hey, there's easy yards here, just take them. And Sam Hartman he will be doing that. There were so many
that
times.
BYU game, they must have had, like, I don't know how many yards from those. Yeah,
all loop passes, and it was just like, these aren't schematic plays, just easy stuff, and that's what Sam Hartman can bring, and that's why you won't have, the random game like Stanford or Marshall, where it's like we can't do anything. It's like, because there's so many easy yards that they're going to take advantage of this year. So I think that's a big deal. But as far as, the things that you said, I don't know if I feel better about anything. It's all kind of the same. There are things that I guess are red flaggy to me, and we'll go over them now. We can go over them, however you want to address it. But I think one of them is, obviously the offensive line with the guards. I don't care who it is. I think people are concerned that it's like, oh, it's Pat Coogan and not Billy Schrouth or Emil Wagner or whatever. I don't care who it is, right? Like, the fact, like, to me, Rocco, the fact that he has earned the job and he was the guy kind of all camp, like, that's fine. Like, to me, that's good. Like, you want a guy who goes out and shows that he's better over and over again, because he's been working with Blake, right? He's been working next to Blake and then next to Carell. Whereas the other guard spot, I don't care that it's Coogan. I do care that they've been rotating 3 guys in there now. It was Coogan, and it was Schrouth, and it was Emil Wagner as well. That's not a lot of continuity, and you do want to be building that. And that's the thing that has me concerned. It's not so much that it's him. It's that, man, they didn't get this figured out till kind of the end. Now, it's not like they can't. And it's very good that they don't open with Ohio State this year, right? So the way the schedule sets up is good for them. It's advantageous. I'm not saying it's like a huge concern. It's like going to derail the season or anything, but it is something that I've kind of flagged as like, I don't love that. I wish it was figured out a little bit earlier. But where did you come out on that situation?
I mean, it always would have been better if the guy that you expected to win the job wins the job, as in
and I think that expectation was Billy Schrauth. Yeah.
Yes, Billy Schrauth, right? So I think that's something that you probably want. And the reason why he was there too is because he's got the highest upside there, right? But I mean, I will say that, like, if you look at it from where they haven't worked anybody, they haven't been like working in Schrauth with the ones. They didn't, at least not the 9 days that I was there. Coogan was, from that day, he was with the ones the entire time, right? And if they, they didn't work Schrauth in during the scrimmage, so they might have on other days, but they didn't in the other days. And obviously, Wagner's been pretty consistently working at tackle since then. I think, but if you look at it, like, before they get to Navy, Coogan will basically have 3.5 weeks of being with the ones, so I think that's probably enough time. I think what you're looking at, though, is you want to have, are you getting the kind of level of play that you want there, right? And I think you can look at where Notre Dame was last year, and it wasn't great going into the year last year. For Notre Dame, certainly there's a lot of questions about Josh Lugg, and I think he had a pretty solid year. And then obviously Patterson was hurt, right? So they're probably maybe even a little bit better off than they were at the beginning of last year. But still, you want to be at a position. You want to be at a higher, you want to be at a higher level. You want to say, like, Coogan's the guy, and he won it because he won it, and not because the other guys aren't ready, right? So, and I don't know if you could say that yet for sure, definitively, about Pat Coogan. But I will say, though, I like Pat Coogan in terms of, like, he is physical. He's going to get after it in the run game. I certainly think he's a smart player. He's going to be assignment sound. It's probably, one of the big reasons why he's won the job, right?
For sure.
And I think if you look at anything at guard, it might be disappointing that Schrauth isn't at the consistency that he needs to be yet. And that's a disappointment, but it's probably as disappointing that Andrew Kostovic is just kind of not really even there in the mix. And and to be fair, I heard
Marcus Freeman didn't even mention it.
And
I mean, that's wow.
And I think that's just, he was Charles Jagasaw got put in at right guard with the twos instead of him. And some of it, I think, is Kostovic bang up, but some of it is probably because they're like, well, he's going to pass him anyways. Like, this is just where it's at. And for a guy who's, started games for Notre Dame, and to kind of be that kind of far away from it, where he's not even the next man in, I mean, that's disappointing. But I also think that part of that is just he's someone who was kind of hitting his head against the ceiling of the player that he could be. He's never really going to be. He was never going to play. He's never going to play in the NFL. Like, he's not a guy who's big enough, strong enough that he was going to play in the league and play at the next level. But I mean, you'd like him to be at least that guy, the next guy in, and he wasn't.
Yeah. Corey Flynn's asking thoughts on trying out different guards starting against easy teams early in the schedule versus sticking with same dudes for continuity. So I think maybe he's either talking about start Coogan against Navy and then start Shrouth against Tennessee State, or he's talking about a rotation.
Or
What
like
do you think? What do you like? What do you think about that?
I mean, hopefully they're in a position where they're getting to play a bunch of guys. So like they're doing well enough in those games that they're able to play those guys, but it's got to be to a point where, because even though it looks like, you're playing Navy, you're playing Tennessee State, you play NC State that's lost a whole bunch of guys, and then you play Central Michigan, right? And you're like, okay, like that seems like a very easy 4 games, but Navy is going to blitz the crap out of them. They are going to bring it like the entire game, right? So you can't just rotate somebody in there if they're not, like, if this person isn't on their P's and Q's, that's going to be a problem. That's the last thing you want to do, is get Sam Hartman killed in the first game against Navy, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to be in that situation. So it sounds like a good idea, but it might not actually work in theory. And then you're going to play NC State too, who also, has to, they're going to bring it because that's what they do, right? That they are a very blitz heavy team. The inside linebackers come a lot. Like they're going to be bringing them a ton. So I think that it might sound like a good idea to do that, but I'm not sure if in practice that it would be that smart to do it. Like, unless you just felt like that they're there about it, like that everybody's at a certain level. And the one thing though so like Aaron Banks, so when Alex Bars went down in 2018, right? The first guy in was Trevor Ruland, right? And Trevor Ruland was just, he's fine. He was like a perfect stopgap guy, but eventually became Aaron Banks, and Aaron Banks won that job. And then he became, for the last, like, I think 5 games of the season, he was the left guard. And obviously from there, he started every game after that. Right. So you might get something there where there is like a switch, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, Shrouth, because sometimes when the lights turn on and when you're getting into those situations, it's like, okay, now this is where we're seeing real growth from some of these guys.
Yeah.
And it could happen. And the other thing is too, is you don't know if like guys are going to be healthy completely, and it might just necessitate something. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, sink or swim, this guy has to play now. Right. So that's I think what is going to be kind of interesting to kind of see what happens there. I don't know. I don't know. Like, I don't think Navy is the game to rotate people. That's my thought about it. Maybe Tennessee State might be different, but I just don't think that Navy game, just based on what they've done, what their defensive coordinator, well, it's a different defense coordinator, but the same head coach who was their defensive coordinator. I mean, I doubt the other guy's going to be passive.
Yeah,
they're going to attack. So Brian Newberry's the head coach. So based on that, I would say probably Tennessee State might be a game where you see that, but not Navy, I don't think.
What I would say is, I bet you they want to play him. And so, whether it's like a formal, like, timeshare, or they start him against another team or whatever, I think they want to play him. And so they'll find a way to play him. It's hard to predict, like, on the offensive line, like how much they're going to rotate or that sort of thing. I'd be stunned if he didn't play in the first 3 games. Like, that wasn't like a blowout. I just think they'll find a way. I don't know how that'll work. It's like you said, like everything you said, I agree with, but I think they want to play him. Because you said the upside is too much. You have to try to realize that.
And you want to be cooking by the time that you're at Ohio State. That's just face it. That's the game that everyone's got circled on their calendar. And you can bet that Notre Dame coaching staff has that circled on their calendar.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of circling something on the calendar, if you have something coming up on your calendar, you've got a season coming up, you have a photo shoot coming up, and you need to have someone to do that for you, we've got the answer for you. VSR Media, which is founded by Notre Dame football pregame host and Emmy award-winning anchor Fahid Sadrazadeh. And honest, as an aside, people just send me messages like, hey, Vahid, he's awesome. Great guy. I was talking to God, and he was like, oh, Vahid, I know him. He's awesome. So I think there's a lot of testimonials about Vahid as a person, and the fact that he's, Emmy award-winning anchor. You're gonna have good quality there. So VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo. If you're looking to upgrade your or a collegiate pro level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or aiming to diversify your growing business, VSR Media specializes in short and long form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily and receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. People need to upgrade their socials. The socials are popping, Jamie. It's all over the place. So that's very important. All right, moving on. Go.
Wait, just one more thing, because I just see that Rajon, because there's a little bit of discussion about Andrew Kristofic in the chat. And I mean, and I don't know if it's partially because maybe he's not all the way healthy, but he didn't have a good spring. Kristofic didn't have a good spring, and he hasn't had a good fall camp. And I don't even know if that's regression, but just if he was, and I don't think it has anything to do with being a new coach either. He just has not played well. And I don't know if it's confidence. I don't know. Injured, he's not 100% healthy or whatever. There's a reason he's not in the mix, because believe me, you'd want somebody that he knows what to do. I've always heard this. It's like, assignment wise, he knows what to do. He's just struggling to be able to complete his assignments now at the level that the other guys are. And that's just kind of where he's at, which obviously is like, you wouldn't expect, but that's kind of like not that different than Caleb Smith, the elder, right? Who came in and people were like, I mean, this guy made plays in the ACC last year. He's Virginia Tech's wide receiver 1. And then he was running with the threes at Notre Dame, right? Like, I mean, it happens sometimes.
And not just that, but like, you have to look at Rocco, right? Rocco, by all accounts, completely reshaped his body, put in the work there, and basically said, like, he made the decision. I'm going to be a player at Notre Dame, right? I'm not going to just continue to do what I've been doing with everything and hope that it works out for me. That he made the opposite decision there. And so if sometimes you have a guy who, and it just seems like that, like people say regression. It's usually not regression. It's the absence of progression. If you're stagnant,
that's probably a good way.
If you're stagnant, people will pass you. They will, because they see this is what the standard is. I need to exceed that. If you're still there, if you stay in the same place, you'll get passed. It's just the way it goes. And it's like that all the time. So, it's just, we've seen so many examples of guys on this team. And when we get to the defense, we're especially going to talk about that. We've seen so many examples of guys on this team who that made the decision to better themselves physically and make themselves available as players from a physical standpoint. That it's just like, that is a show of intent by those players. And that generally translates to flipping the switch on the field, just generally. And if you haven't done that, then that also translates to, like, you're not doing the other things too, so those things are usually correlated. The other thing I want to talk about on offense is, with I don't want to say the wideouts, just the passing game in general. And maybe you've heard different, but there has been a lack of talk about explosives in the passing game, specifically getting the ball over the top. Now, again, it's a good secondary now. Okay, so it's not like they're going against a bunch of dudes who are going to give up a bunch of over the top plays. Okay. You do want to hear it. You do need to be doing it against the good teams too. That concerns me a little bit, because the other part too is I don't think that that's a strength of Great House's game or Flores's game. For as good as they are, I don't see them getting over the top of teams. So I don't know. Maybe you've heard it, right? And maybe you've heard it and didn't get into reports because it's just kind of anecdotal, and sometimes those things don't get into like an official, like I'm writing up about things. But that just concerns me. They do need to be an explosive team, just generally. We haven't seen evidence of that, but that can come. So that's just something I'm flagging. Is there anything about that or the wide receivers that you want to just kind of comment on?
No, I mean, I think I would, as you would put it, Greg, I would monitor that.
We're monitoring.
We're monitoring the lack of explosives.
Watch this space.
Yeah, because I haven't heard it. Haven't heard it. I do think that the one thing that I'll say that is fair. This will be the best corner group specifically that Notre Dame's receivers play all year. I think that is true.
Yeah.
I think that is true. So that, adds context to it. And you're also not, as you mentioned last week, Greg, you're not like doing things to kind of scheme up plays in camp. That's not something that happens. Like, it's not something that you're like, okay, we saw this on film from, Central Michigan. So this is what we're going to do. And when they're in this coverage,
right,
we got this matchup. You're not doing that in camp. That's not what kind of camp is about. So it's different than games. But I mean, it's just something like, when you saw, like, when you got Will Fuller on the team, Will Fuller's getting deep, Will Fuller's getting deep. Like, guys who make explosive plays are making explosive plays, and haven't seen enough of that. So I think that is, and to me, it's definitely a question about the offense going into the season. So for all the people that are kind of assuming that Notre Dame is going to be a top 10 offense, that would be my one, like, we'll see. We'll see there, because I do believe that Notre Dame will be able to run the ball very effectively. Also, too, explosive in the running game, right? Are they going to get that, right? Are they going to get it? And I don't know. We'll see.
The running game doesn't bother me as much, because it's just that is like they're not trying to out leverage the opponent. Like, it's like that's a game plan thing. Like, you can get them in a situation where they're outnumbered or they're out schemed, and like that can just lead to it. Plus, like, if Estime's not going, and Payne's not going, like that, I don't mind it as much, but it just you're doing 7-on-7 so often, and you're doing team throwing so often. You just want, like, it needs to be sort of a theme. This team cannot be anything we want it to be if they're not explosive in the passing game. Period. I don't care how good Hartman is intermediate. The easy yards, look at the 05 team, right? Like we just talked about, so many easy yards. They threw the ball down the field all the time, right? Like, that was a huge part of why that team was good. So every Notre Dame team, 2015, Will Fuller over the top, right? 2017, their explosives were off the charts in the running game and all those other things. You do need to be explosive. Okay. So it's just, that has to happen. Monitoring, like you said, it's just, it needs to come up. I think on the other side of the ball, I talked to you about, or I asked you about things that, you feel better about with the offense. It's like, I don't know. I can't think of a position on this team, I guess, besides corner, because we're already high on them, that we wouldn't feel better about right now on defense. It just seems like the defense is locked in, and they've got contributions from reserve players that you would think be reserve players, guys that you expect to be good. They've been good. The corners are performing very well. I've loved what I hear from Ramon Henderson at safety. I love what I've heard from Xavier Watts at safety. Is there any position that you're not like, man, I feel really good about them?
I would say that maybe the strong side, and it's not that I feel bad about it, but I think that um, the fact that they have like such two guys there, their main two guys, Javante Jean Baptiste and Nana Osafamenta, that they're such different skill sets, and you'd like it to kind of be a little bit more balanced. Where Nana is clearly like a very good player against the run. He's not a big factor as a pass rusher, and JJB is not a great player versus the run. Is a much better pass rusher, right? He's a much better pass rusher. That would really be it, to be honest. I really think that, and I would say that the depth at safety still, like if they lose one guy at safety, one of their top three guys, because Watts, Henderson, DJ Brown, because I would say Antonio Carter didn't see enough from him to say like, oh yeah, he's gonna plug him in, right? Because I think he was still kind of learning everything, right, and still getting adjusted. Didn't flash when we saw, right? So, and then you got Adon Schuler too, who I think could play, but it's like you don't want to have to count on a freshman, right? So I would say that, but outside of that, like the defense is so much faster. They're playing so much faster. It's obvious that the year two under Golden has made it has made a difference. The trimming of the menu, I think they've looked good when they've, what we've seen from the spring to even now too, with just that spear package, that big dime package, right, with the three safeties. The pass rush was phenomenal on that Tuesday scrimmage. I think they're deeper there at edge rusher than most people think that they were heading into it. I thought, someone like Maris Leofau, who, last year you didn't hear us. People were like, oh yeah, maybe he can be the guy that he was in 2021. But there wasn't like a lot of like camp hype about him last year because
the evidence wasn't there.
He was banged up and stuff during camp.
Yeah.
They were like, we held him out today because he was like, there hasn't been anything like that. And he looks more like the guy that he was in 2021 in the preseason in terms of just his level of confidence, playing under control, playing faster, playing more violent. And then also to him being used on the edge with him and Botello, they're working together, and like, some of the two-man like stunt stuff that they did was like, looked really, really good. And yeah, I just think overall, like, and then you have guys like Jalen Sneed is not ready to be a starting linebacker. He is not yet. If he had to play for long periods of the game, if he was like your starting Will, I think you'd be like, he's not there yet. But as a sub package guy, as a guy, when they unleash him as a blitzer or they unleash him off the edge, like, man, he is like, he's a threat. He is going to make plays. He's going to create havoc. So there's that kind of stuff. And there's guys like, there's so many freshmen that like are, if they're not going to help this year, they're going to help next year. Right.
Yeah.
Like Drake Bowen and Jaden Osbury in the same class, and where both those guys are, like, if they might not need to help that much this year, but they could help this year. Both are capable of playing this year. Christian Gray, like, if they weren't so deep at corner, people would be buzzing about him in a different way. Not that they already aren't, but like, I think we've said too, like Clarence Lewis is a pretty good football player, and he's like the fifth corner, right? So, um, and Harper looks good at nickel. So
Mm-hmm.
that's was something that I think people were kind of, thinking about. But they also, they have some depth there because Lewis can play a little bit there. Um, I just think they're deeper, they're faster, they have more pass rushers, they're bigger in the interior. That's something that people like. I think last year, Cross and Adamola were the starters. You basically had two guys who were 280 pounds inside, right? So now Cross is about 10 pounds heavier than he was last year, and Mills is 306. And then you have Anya and Rubio, who, I mean, they are playing like starters, So they're just so much better, like in so many different areas, that I knew the defense was going to be better. Like, I think it was just inevitable they were going to be better,
For
right?
sure.
But now I'm like, I think top 15 isn't out of the question to be like a top 15 defense. I think that's on the table. They're going to create a lot more havoc. They just are more athletic and playing faster,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah. And Rajon asked about the intensity in camp. I mean, it's definitely ramped up. It's definitely ramped up, but also I would say, it's I think Marcus Freeman probably has a better feel of it now in terms of like, okay, this is the day that I gotta like ramp it up, and this is the day where I scale it back. And that's also being year two as a head coach and
Mm-hmm.
kind of learning those things. And he kind of talked about some of the stuff in his press conference too about like the sports science aspect of it, of like um, finding out like when they needed to kind of back off and when they needed to push. And obviously they had some scrimmages, so they were like, ramping up towards that, building up towards that, and then they kind of cooled it back down. So there's all these other things that helps it. But like in Rajon said again, competition brings it out, because what it is there's so many guys that are capable of playing and doing and making plays and doing these things. And when you have all these other guys pushing, it's like everyone has to get their level up. It's just, or you're not going to play. That's just how it is. And
Yeah.
it's like that at so many positions on defense. And I think because of that, it is, you've just seen they're just so much better on all three levels of the defense. And very, very excited about the freshman class. And just, I mean, you can, anyone who if you don't listen to the Rakes Report podcast with our good buddy Chris Wilson, Greg did a good job on breaking down the rankings of the position groups with our buddy Michael Bryan as well. And I think if you get the chance to look at that, I break down all the freshmen. It's something that I do every year, like a freshman orientation thing. And it's easily the highest I've been on after going to a camp and seeing, and I've been doing this for 9 years now for ISD. It's easily the highest I've been on after seeing these guys in camp, where in terms of where they are now and also where these guys are going to be. I mean, I'm very excited about the potential of the defense. And I think the scary thing is that there's so many good young guys that you're going to see guys maybe not have that Morrison jump where they're all of a sudden picking off passes against,
Yeah.
Clemson and having those kind of days. But there's going to be guys who are like, this guy has just forced his way onto the field. That is
Mm-hmm.
going to happen this year, because there's a lot of young guys that are getting that got a lot of good reps in camp and are going to be ascending players for Notre Dame.
So the competition, I mean, it's just like getting the players used to playing with an edge and having to raise your level. Because that's what makes you better, right? Like, is having to raise your game constantly. And so by him doing that, encouraging all these competitions in every aspect of practice, that's where you grow as a player, as a team, as a unit, and all that stuff. It's going to lead to It's going to lead to trash talk, and that trash talk is going to lead to confrontation. You know, you don't want cheap shots, of course, right? There's always a fine line with this stuff. Hopefully, Marcus Freeman has found the line, and he's, they've been able to practice on the correct side of it. But that's where you get it from, and that's where you get the extreme. What you're looking for is being able to execute with an edge, but at the highest level possible. And that's the challenge for, like, especially an offensive coordinator. And this is what I'm really interested to see how much that has paid off. Because when you are locked in, you can execute anything. It kind of doesn't matter, and we talk about lose teams all the time. And this is one thing that they could always do. They talk about running the ball on anyone. Lose teams could, because of the way they practiced and because it was so physical in practice, it didn't, like, you go back and watch some of these games, like 8-man boxes, 9-man boxes, like safeties are sitting there at like 7 yards, and they'll run the ball on you because it doesn't matter, because they are so used to dealing with adverse conditions that you're always executing. You throw the ball in a bubble, the receivers are locked in. They will make their blocks. The receiver knows how to play off those blocks. Like, everything, you can out execute teams all the time. Like, that's what the competitiveness in practice leads to. That's what the edge leads to, and all those other things. And I think that will show up in the fact that, Matt has talked about this a lot in a lot of reports about how much the defense is blitzing the offense. They're blitzing them. They're blitzing them. They're blitzing them. Like, it'll be interesting to see, like, how well Notre Dame does handling that stuff, because it's like a lot of the time in camp, they will manufacture good periods for the offense or for the defense. Because, like, hey, we need to handle success too. And it seems like Marcus Freeman has taken the tact of, you need to make your own success. I'm not going to give you success. Another part is, like, the defense needs to learn how to blitz as well. I think that's something that is kind of lost.
Well, people just think you're a great athlete and you're just gonna, look, just send him, he'll get there. It's like, no, it's like there is like a science to it.
And you need to rep it live, and you need to be able to, people,
you need to walk through it, and then you need to rep it, and then you need to run through it, and you rep it live. That's like, it is very much like, people don't, I don't think people understand that. It's also too, when you aren't repping it good enough, that's how that play against Ohio State happens.
Yes.
How many times did they rep that? Probably, my guess, based on that, not enough.
Not enough times.
Not enough times. And that's how you get that play. Because if you are repping it enough to that point, then all of a sudden they call it in the game. The people, like, I mean, you're like locking eyes with the other guys, and then you're like, oh, this is it. This is it.
Yeah.
We're finally calling this. We're gonna hit home, because you know it, because you've repped it, you've done it in practice, you've worked this thing. The timing is right there, and it's just like one of those things that, like, it's just, I mean, as good as it's the exact same thing as, like, when a play caller calls a play in the huddle on offense, and you're like, okay, we're going to throw that throwback to Alizé Mack there against Stanford, right? And everyone in the huddle's like, oh yes, like, this is a touchdown, right? Like, you get those certain play calls. Well, it's the same thing on defense, and a lot of times it's like a pressure call where you're like, oh man, they don't even know. Like, we're bringing this pressure. They haven't seen it before. We've repped it. This has worked so good in practice. Just wait till we unleash it. And now it's 3rd and 6. We're unleashing it, and it hits. And it's like, like, play the symphony orchestra. Like, it's like that kind of feeling. But you got to be able to do that and have it at a high place. And that's why I think too, if you look at it, maybe in the NFL, and this is probably an Al Golden thing, you probably don't have to rep it as much, because these guys are already, like, they're pros at it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, you can walk through it, and it's like, these guys are going to hit it. Well, these guys aren't there. It's all, everybody's an amateur here. So maybe if it's like a more veteran team, you can get away with kind of not doing it as much. But especially with a lot of these young guys that they have, you got to just rep it. And I think too, that's going to make all the difference.
And that goes to, Al Golden saying we're getting rid of some stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to have it installed. It's installed. We know it, but we don't rep it all the time. And so you get in a game, it's like, we did it. We didn't do it very well. We didn't rep it enough, right? It wasn't. And I think that's part of like why you get rid of things. It's not that the players can't, ingest it and they can't know what to do when they get in the game. It's just like, if you haven't repped it, you can't build mastery. And that's how mastery is built. You just do something over and over again. And so that kind of goes to, what Al Golden was doing. It's basically, I took a bunch of stuff out. We need to get good at these things, and that'll propel us on. Tyler Hack says, don't forget the question that you posted on Twitter yesterday. I think we should get to that. I didn't want to derail the show. Maybe we can get to that on Thursday. We can do
save it for a post-game show.
Well, I was not a post-game.
Yeah.
I don't want Mike involved in that.
Yeah.
But maybe we'll do it. We'll do it on Thursday, because I think Thursday is a good time to do another mailbag. Get questions from everybody, about what they want to know about the team and that sort of thing. Get specific. So I think Thursday will be a mailbag show, and we'll talk about the question that you post on Twitter. So I think that'll do it. We'll leave it there. Thank you everyone for tuning in. If this is your first time catching the show, if you like what you heard, hit the like, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell. Links are in the description below. Look out for us on Thursday, probably at the same time. Matter of fact, definitely at the same time. We'll be doing a mailbag show, so get ready for that. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Have a good rest of the day, and we will talk to you on Thursday.